Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, welcome tonight to another night of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Tonight we have renowned author Steve Alten, who has written a many series of books, one of the most famous being the Meg series, and we'll be discussing his upcoming book, the Hell's Aquarium, which is part of the Meg series. We're really looking forward to talking to him tonight on the show. How about you, Jer?
Yeah, it'll be a pretty good show tonight. I was going to see, we could start off the show. We're going to start off by asking Steve a little bit about his background and what got him involved with the Megalodon and just his research and his fiction writing.
Was that a question?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing
We're good.
Well,
yeah, I was going to say, you want to start off the show by saying a little bit about your background and what got you involved with, like, Megalodon research and your fiction writing.
well, let's see. From an educational standpoint, I have a bachelor's in physical education, a master's in sports medicine, and a doctorate degree in sports administration. None of those degrees actually do anything for writing other than writing my thesis and dissertation. But at the age of 36, I found myself struggling to support a family of 5 and trying all sorts of stuff to, try to create a means of making money. And it was in the summer of 1995 that I picked up the Time magazine, and on the front cover was the Mariana Trench. And the Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the ocean. It's 7 miles down. It's basically a 40-mile wide, 1,500-mile long gorge that's unexplored. The pressure is unbelievable down there. But the article is all about hydrothermal vents and how life really began in the sea. And after I read the article, an idea clicked in my head, and that was when I was a teenager. I used to love to read books about shark attacks. It probably started with Jaws, and went on to other books. And there was always a blurb about the prehistoric cousin of the great white shark called Megalodon, usually accompanied by a hokey picture of taken at the Smithsonian of 6 nerdy-looking scientists in this huge jaw. And I thought, I wonder if scientifically if it would be sound if a creature like that could still be alive living in the Mariana Trench. And so I started doing research, and, after 30 days I realized that I had a pretty good plot here and decided I was going to become a writer. And because I had a job, what I call a JOB, a just over broke, during the day, I had to work on the book at 10 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning. And, that I set my goal, and I'm a very goal-oriented person. And, people ask me, well, how do you write a novel? How do you write a 400-page novel? And the answer is sort of like the answer that I would give to how to eat an elephant, and that is you eat it a bite at a time and you write a novel a page at a time. And if you can write 3 or 4 pages a night in about 100 days, you'll have a 400-page novel. And, that's what I did, and that's basically how I got started.
Well, to start off the show, speaking of the Megalodon, could you give a general description of what the Megalodon is for people that may not know?
Well, a Megalodon is essentially a 70-foot, 70,000-pound great white shark. It was the prehistoric cousin of the great white. It dominated the oceans for about 32 million years. It only disappeared recently, maybe 10,000 to 100,000 years ago. It could still be out there, and it was essentially the nastiest predator to have ever inhabited our planet.
So, where did they used to live, like in the dinosaur times?
Well, I mean, they didn't go back to really dinosaur times. Dinosaurs' reign ended about 65 million years ago with the asteroid strike that hit Earth. Megalodon was around about 35 to 32 million years ago, and like I said, only disappeared recently. So it wasn't really a dinosaur shark. It was just a massive, there were huge dinosaur sharks, but this was not one of them. This was just a massive, massive shark. You know, its teeth, we know that it existed because we have its teeth as fossilized evidence. We find their teeth all over the world. The largest ever found was about 7.5 inches. I mean, if you equate 1 inch of tooth for every 10 feet of shark, then you can understand that these things were about 70 feet long. Females grew much bigger than the males, and they were just the scariest thing you ever saw.
So basically, they weren't really in one single area of the world. They were just in a whole bunch of places.
They proliferated all the oceans. They weren't limited to shallows. They could go into deep water, just like we know great whites do. We find their teeth in rivers and phosphate pits and mountainsides that used to be covered with water. We know that they used to hunt whales. We find their teeth in whalebone. They used to hunt the calves in the whale nurseries. Whales like to give birth in the lagoons, so you know, offshore, and Megalodon knew that, and that's where they used. We find a lot of their teeth there. But that's not to say we don't find them in the deep waters too. It's just more difficult for us to assess them.
One of our other team members actually just called into the line, Brent.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah. Also, since we just started the show, I was wondering, did you have a question for Steve at this time for the on the Megalodon?
Oh, we're talking about the Megalodon today, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys are like a whirlwind of preparation. I'll tell you. I'm like, you got me all excited here.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Megalodon. Well, I'll talk about anything you want to talk about, but Megalodon is a lot of fun.
Well, one thing I was going to bring up was, can you explain the theory that they could inhabit the deep oceans?
Well, it's, essentially you have to understand that 70% of the planet is covered by ocean, and we've only explored 5% of the ocean, and less than 1% of the deep water. So we really don't know what's down there. People say, well, wouldn't we be able to see its telltale dorsal fin? The thing was 7 feet tall. And the answer to that is, well, sharks don't surface like whales do or dolphins do to breathe. The sharks can inhabit the deep waters, the mid waters, and never come up. There's plenty of food down there. And so, you cannot, and plus, we're not around very much to see what's surfacing in the ocean. So you have to realize that there was no real reason for this apex predator to have disappeared, other than its only natural enemy was orca. Not one orca, but a pod of orca could probably take down a Megalodon, and because they hunted alone. So the only, it's certainly feasible that Megalodon could have gone deep, because orca can't go deep. So, they could still be out there. What's important to understand is that the worst kind of science is to make conjecture based upon no research at all. I mean, prior to 1977, scientists were absolutely convinced that life could not exist in the deep water. And the reason they believed that is not because they ever explored the deep water, was because they felt, well, based on their limited knowledge, since no light can reach the deep waters, then you can't have photosynthesis and you can't have, life. So once they developed the Alvin submersible in 1977, they actually went down there to check it out, They discovered hydrothermal vents and all sorts of tube worms and colonies of bacteria, and they found a new source of energy, not photosynthesis, but chemosynthesis, where chemicals in the water are used for energy, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's life down at the bottom of the sea because they actually bothered to check it out. So when people say to me, well, Megalodon can't be around because we haven't seen one, well, so what? I mean, you know, they're not circling there for a photo shoot. You know, they're going to live the way they live, and if we find them, we find them.
Okay, Mr. Alten, I'm just curious. In any of your books that you've written, have you done any work with the giant squid?
Yeah, my book, The Loch, which is about the Loch Ness Monster, opens up in the Sargasso Sea when on an expedition to film the giant squid. And this was actually written 2 years before they first filmed the giant squid. And it's I don't want to give too much away, but something happens with the giant squid that it actually lures another predator, which is linked to the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, because I like just, you know, in the past 10 years, you know, they've got that one videotape of the giant squid in the deep ocean, and for the longest time, you know, at least on the Discovery Channel and things like that, you were getting the notion perhaps that the thing was extinct, or it may be just, you know, there was a very small, well, I mean, I think there is a very small population, but they were being very, very skeptical, probably rightfully so, but once they got the live footage of this creature, it kind of turned the world upside down, from my perspective, about marine science. Do you believe so?
Well, I don't think there was any question that giant squids existed. I think it was there just wasn't that much known about them. You know, they're a difficult species to film. You got to lure them up. But you know, we're discovering new creatures all the time coming from the abyss, and the more we get down there to explore it, the more we're going to find. And you know, we're just at the tip of the iceberg in understanding what's on our own planet. I mean, from a technological standpoint, it's easier to explore the moon than it is to explore a region of the planet 7 miles down, simply because the water pressure is so great that, you know, you really have to have a submersible that's going to be able to withstand 16,000 pounds per square inch.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Steve, I had a question for you. What kind of diet does the Megalodon have? Like, do you know what they eat nowadays?
Well, I don't know what they eat nowadays, but I know that we know that they used to eat whale, and we know that from the fossilized evidence. You know, of course, the easy answer is to say Megalodon can eat anything at once, and since they were around when primitive man were around, there's a pretty good chance that maybe they ate some primitive man in there too. But you know, sharks are sharks, and they need a high fat content in order to be to quench their energy needs, and that's why great whites hunt seals and sea lions and elephant seals, and you know, great whites really don't hunt man. Man, you know, unfortunately gets in the way sometimes, and but we're really not the choice of a shark, just because, you know, most of us don't have the kind of fat content that's going to please a shark. So Megalodon, it would be the same thing. I mean, you know, whales obviously have a high fat content.
Well, would you say that these sharks would go to the surface, or go, I guess you say, closer to the surface at nighttime than they would in the daytime?
Well, I mean, if they were hunting a whale, then they would probably attack it from underneath, just like a great white would attack a seal. seals are air breathers and whales are air breathers, and you go where the air breathers are if that's what you eat. And the air breathers hang out on the surface. So yeah, I mean, if a Megalodon was hunting a school of whales or a pod of whales, sure they'd hit them on the surface.
So would you say that you personally, do you believe that it's a deep sea creature, or do you think that it's just closer to the surface and we just haven't found it yet?
Well, a modern-day Megalodon would probably be a mid to deep water creature. An ancient Megalodon, it's hard to say. We just don't know that much about them. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily categorize them as a surface dweller or a deep water dweller any more you can with a great white shark. I wrote the first Meg book 13 years ago, and I named all sorts of things in there, which is part of the fiction, that have all come true. I mean, one thing is that these sharks were deep water predators, and that they were certainly capable of it. And not that we found a Megalodon, but recent research from great whites, tagging great whites, show that they go 2, 3, 4 miles deep. Now, the belief on great whites were that they were shallow water hunters, and that was all proven false when they actually checked it out. So, it's conjecture. We don't know that much about Megalodon. We just know that they were big and they were fierce and they hunted whales.
And right now we're being asked, actually, on one of our chat rooms, they're asking us, do you yourself actually collect sighting reports?
I mean, if there was I've seen sighting reports over the years. There was a recent sighting in Australia of something that was reported to be, like a 40-foot great white, which is, would be a small Megalodon. But if they ever have the outstanding evidence about it, then you'll probably see me on the 6 o'clock news doing an interview.
Well, no, they were asking, do you collect them? Like, if someone had a report and they wanted to report into somebody, like, would they come to you?
I'm sure that I've got a pretty big fan base, and they stay in contact with me. So I'm sure if something was cited, that my email would light up with the report. I don't actively chase these things down. I mean, they pretty much come to me when they come out, and that's fine. I mean, I'm on my 11th book right now, and only 4 of them are on Megalodon. So I have other interests too.
Well, while we're on the topic of Megalodon, I was going to bring up, so would you say that the Megalodon, do you think that could be the same thing as some of these other legends, like the Black Demon and any other kind of giant sharks?
Well, I'm not familiar with the Black Demon, but, Megalodon was not a myth. I mean, this was a real creature. We know that it existed. I mean, we've got millions of fossilized teeth. So, I mean, this is not a legend, like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. I mean, this is a real creature that existed, just as much as a T-Rex existed. The only difference is that we know that T-Rex is extinct, and we just don't know if Megalodon is extinct.
So how many of them do you think would be alive if they were still alive today?
113. How many do I think would be alive? I had no. How would I know that? My last survey, I don't know.
So they were just saying, like, you think there'd be a bunch of them, or would there be not that many of them?
I don't think that. They're not in schools like dolphin or. It's sort of like a great white shark. How many great white sharks are there out there? Well, we have a basic idea because we tag them, but, you can find great whites in certain, in waters all over the world. But, if you want to find a great white, you go to the Red Triangle in San Francisco, you go to South Africa, you go to Australia. We pretty much know where they hang out in packs. Megalodon would probably be the same way. There'd probably be certain waters that supported it a little bit more than others, and We just haven't found that. There was a recent article that came out a couple days ago that they found evidence of a Megalodon nursery, and that was pretty interesting. An extinct one, but they found evidence that Megalodon adults would guard the nursery of their young, which is a pretty interesting revelation.
Well, something that I was wondering was, did you have a question, Nick?
Oh, I was going to just briefly ask you about the Megalodon's, like the teeth of the Megalodon. I pulled up this article that says that the teeth of the Megalodon were closer to that of a modern-day sand tiger shark than a great white. Have you ever come across that theory in your research of the Megalodon, Mr. Alten?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with it. I mean, some people say that, but I've never agreed with that. And, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We know that they were big. We know their teeth look like great whites. So you pretty much imagine they'd be a big, bulky shark like a great white as opposed to a sand tiger shark. If we can shift this a little bit, the new book that I have that's out there in paperback right now is the fourth part of the Meg series called Meg Hell's Aquarium, and besides Megalodon, there's a lot of other creatures in there too. When I was growing up, I was always fascinated with dinosaurs, but I always felt that the sea dinosaurs were a lot scarier than the land dinosaurs, the sea monsters. And so I put together a theory and corroborated with some geologists and marine scientists and some other people. And the planet used to be covered by one giant ocean, and called the Panthalassa Sea, or the Panthalassa Ocean. And the Panthalassa covered the whole planet, and the land masses at that point, the continents hadn't split apart. So this was 220 million years ago. Well, there is, some scientific plausibility that there could be a lost Panthalassa Sea beneath the Philippine Sea Plate, which is where the Mariana Trench and all these other deep sea trenches are. And so the plot of Hell's Aquarium was to create an ancient sea that these creatures still lived, not just Megalodon, but ocean predators like Leopleurodon and Mosasaur and all sorts of bizarre sharks and lobe-fin fish and just the nastiest sea creatures ever to have existed, and the nickname for this place is Hell's Aquarium.
So, in your book Hell's Aquarium, can you explain a little bit about like your series in general, like your Megalodon series?
Yeah, I mean, without giving too much away, in the first book, Meg, a female Megalodon rises from the Mariana Trench because the hero of the story, Jonas Taylor, who used to be a deep-sea marine submersible pilot, he's trying to prove that these creatures exist. He ran into one 7 years ago, and he raced his submersible back to the surface, and something went wrong and killed two of the people, the scientists on board. So he was basically kicked out of the Navy and became a paleontologist or a paleobiologist, and spent the next 7 years trying to prove to the world that these things were alive. Well, he gets the opportunity to go back down to collect a white tooth. White because a white tooth would be unfossilized, proving the creatures existed. And while he's down there in the Mariana Trench in a submersible, he happens upon a Megalodon, and through a series of circumstances, it follows some bait back to the surface, and you know, the rest of the book basically becomes one faction trying to capture it, and one faction trying to kill it, and an awful lot of people trying to stay out of its way. And the series continues on from there. In Hell's Aquarium, the Tanaka Institute in Monterey houses one of these pups, which is no longer a pup. It's about 70 feet long and it weighs about 50 tons. And her name is Angel, and Angel is the star attraction at the Tanaka Institute. And she, in Hell's Aquarium, she has given birth to 5 female pups. And the reason they're female has to do with the plot line. Some evolutionary facts that we've just started learning about sharks. That sharks, certain species of sharks, can actually internally fertilize their eggs themselves, which is nature's way of preserving a species. And it's not just with sharks, it's with other species too. And it's almost like nature has created a perfect female clone that doesn't have to be inseminated by a male. And so that's part of the plot on Hell's Aquarium, and the other part, of course, takes place at this ancient sea, and where these massive sea creatures are lurking, and a Dubai prince wants to capture these creatures and put them in his aquarium in Dubai, and the two storylines are sort of woven together.
So would you say that is Hell's Aquarium the final book in the series, or do you plan on making the series larger?
I plan on at least one more book called Night Stalkers, which is a continuation of Hell's Aquarium. But after that, we'll see. And
your book, just wondering if anybody wanted to buy your book, could you talk a little bit about where they could pick up your book or where they could see anything like that?
Yeah, my books are sold in all the bookstores, and Hell's Aquarium came out about 2 weeks ago in paperback, and there's 2 different covers, both of a Megalodon and an aquarium, and the covers are really cool, and it's a mass market paperback, so it's only, it's under $10. But you can get them at Barnes & Noble and Borders, and you can get them on Amazon.com, and you can probably find them in drugstores and supermarkets too.
Well, regarding the Megalodon in general, were you aware of that? They found a tooth that was supposedly not that old. It was on the Monsterquest episode you were featured on. I wasn't sure if you watched that.
Yeah, I try to make a habit of watching the TV shows I'm on.
Well,
that part of the episode was pretty good. The rest of it, the Monsterquest, was a little bit lame, but because instead of hunting a great white or a Megalodon, they were actually circling a whale shark, like swimming with your great-grandfather or something. But
Mr. Alten,
that part of the episode was pretty good.
Oh, you had a question?
I was like, oh yeah, if he wanted to, we could move on to another one of his books that I seems very interesting to me. The book called Domain.
Whatever you
could you just give us a brief synopsis on Domain, Mr. Alten?
Sure. Domain is basically about the 2,000-year-old Mayan calendar and its prophecy that predicts that on December 21st in the year 2012, humanity goes out. That's it. We become extinct. And what's scary about the Mayan prophecy, which the movie 2012 never gets into, is that, first of all, you have to understand what a calendar is. A calendar is not, a hunk of paper that you put on your wall and check off the days. The definition of a calendar regarding the Mayan calendar is an instrument of time and space that actually charts how long it takes our planet to revolve around the sun. Somehow, 2,000 years ago, a group of jungle-dwelling Indians created a calendar that is more accurate than the calendar we currently use today. It's a 10,000th of a day more accurate. And the Maya were an enigma because, you know, here were a race of Indians that never mastered the wheel, and yet they created this unbelievable calendar, which is actually 4 different calendars in one. And the calendars not only chart space, but they can predict events in 20-year epochs, and they can do all sorts of things. And so it really was an amazing calendar. And the guy who brought this wisdom to the Mayans was named Kukulkan. And Kukulkan, who was in the Mayan city of Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula about 1,000 years ago, Kukulkan is described as being a tall Caucasian man with a long flowing beard and white hair and deep blue eyes. And he was a wise man, and he taught them astronomy, he taught them about the calendar, he taught them agriculture and engineering. The Kukulkan Pyramid in Chichen Itza is this amazing pyramid. It's a 4-sided ziggurat of stone. It's 91 steps plus the platform up top equals 365 as in days of the year. And every fall and spring equinox, when the sun is just about right, it strikes the pyramid on the northern balustrade and creates the shadow of a giant serpent. And how they were able to build this is just absolutely amazing. You know, this is a 1,000-year-old pyramid. Anyway, who was Kukulkan? Why is, you know, they describe him as a Caucasian, a bearded Caucasian. Well, there were no Caucasians in Mesoamerica 1,000 years ago. The first white men didn't come over until 1519 when Hernan Cortez invaded the Yucatan. So Domain deals with the mystery of the Mayan calendar. It takes place in 2012. It deals with the fact that in every ancient culture there's a wise man that matches up with Kukulkan. In Egypt, ancient Egypt, that built the Giza pyramids, he was known as Osiris. He was known as Merlin to the people who built Stonehenge. He was known as Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs and Kukulkan. To the Maya, he was known as Viracocha to the Inca, who made the Nazca lines. And so what Domain is about is it's about the end of humanity and what's going to happen in 2012. And it starts off 65 million years ago with the asteroid strike that hit our planet off the Yucatan, what would eventually become the Yucatan Peninsula, and wiped out the dinosaurs. And it turns out that asteroid was not an asteroid, something else.
Interesting. Through my reading that I do a lot of reading, I came across this theory that said that in 2012, what's going to happen is all the planets in the solar system are going to align. Are you familiar with that theory yourself?
Well, there will be an alignment, but the bigger alignment is that our solar system, our sun, will come into alignment with the black hole at the center of the galaxy, and that hasn't happened for 25,800 years. So, and somehow the Maya knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, right now I'm doing some research right now on the Megalodon, and I was wondering, have you ever seen the Japanese footage that they claim was a Megalodon? It's like a giant shark. It's in the deep ocean. It's on a TV show over there, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a Megalodon. You know, right after May came out in 1997, some Japanese scientists lowered a bait box and a video camera into the Sea of Japan, and about 6,000 feet of water, which is pretty deep, although the Mariana Trench is 6,000 feet, so it gives you an idea of the difference. But They discovered an undiscovered species of shark that was a bottom dweller, but wasn't a megalodon. It's about 25, 30 feet, which is still a big shark.
Yeah.
Also, do you know of any sharks that are rumored to be existing now, or any sharks that are large like Megalodon that could be alive, or any sharks like that that are just interesting to talk about in general?
Well, there was a goblin shark that they got on film that is a deep water shark that managed to get to the surface, and that was pretty weird. I think you could probably find it on YouTube. Again, there's all sorts of creatures from the deep that occasionally end up in the surface water so we could see them, but nothing like a megalodon.
So where would you suggest that where would somebody go to look for a large shark like this? Is a question that's coming up in one of our chat rooms.
Where would you go to look for them? I mean, that's a difficult question to ask. I mean, in my books, they're in the abyss, but, in real life, I mean, they could be anywhere. I mean, the average depth of the ocean is about 2 miles. And, once you get deeper than about 1,300 feet, there's no more daylight. And, you enter a realm called the mid-water region, which is the largest habitat on the planet for creatures. So, but, I mean, the ocean is so vast, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint one area to start looking.
So it's 1,300 feet when you start getting those really weird-looking animals, like the really deep-sea ones?
Yeah, at 1,300 feet, daylight can no longer pierce the depths, and so it's blackness, and that's where you get creatures that, have photophores and that create their own light and all sorts of weird stuff.
Mm-hmm. So,
well, go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, I was going to say, with dealing with those weird animals, do you think if there were to be a megalodon or a megalodon-like animal, if it were to be found, would it have adapted to be like one of those really weird-looking fish, or do you think it would still resemble like a normal shark that we would know, like what you think when you think of a shark?
Well, in the Meg series, they've adapted by losing their pigment, and they sort of have a little bit of a glow. So the megalodons in the Meg series are all albino.
You had a question, Nick?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Alten, I just wanted to know a little bit about your book, Monsterquest, and a little bit about the different animals that are featured in that piece.
Well, it's not my book. I contributed a short story to it. It's a series of short stories on wild monsters, and I think I wrote I wrote a short story, and I wrote the introduction at the request of the authors.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And, well, a question about the megalodon that people are asking us. Do you think that the megalodon, if it was still around, do you think that it would be, like there's a possibility that it could attack boats or things like that, as what people are saying? Or do you know any stories like that?
Well, megalodon don't, they're not after boats. They might be attracted to the electrical field that's generated by a motor, just like a great white shark could be, but megalodon's going to go after the food, and the food would still be whales. So.
And overall, do you think that they could be alive, or are you more skeptical in the fact that you think that they might have died out?
It's not a question of being skeptical. It's a question of what's scientifically plausible, and I 100% I believe that unless you search for something, you can't make an absolute statement about whether a creature's alive or not. And I'll back that, forever.
people also are asking this right now. They're saying, have you ever had a debate with a skeptic on the existence that they could exist or could not exist? Just like on an interview or anything like that?
I've never gotten into a one-on-one debate. I've been on TV shows where I take the opinion that it's still alive or it's plausible that it's still alive, and somebody else will stand there and say, no, it's not alive. And when Meg first came out, I did get into a debate with this guy, Richard Ellis, who's written some interesting marine books. He's basically not a writer. He's more of a painter. But I was sort of set up for a debate by the LA Times. And Ellis was hired to do a hatchet job on Meg because the LA Times book editor was pissed off that Bantam Doubleday had used a quote from the LA Times reporter calling the book Jurassic Shark. And the LA Times book editor didn't like that. And so he hired Richard Ellis to do a hatchet job on Meg and read an advanced reading copy of the book. And Ellis, who was a bit of an a-hole, basically was criticizing the science in Meg, and he didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, he said only in Alten's topsy-turvy world could warm water be below cold water. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, this isn't kindergarten science where hot goes up and cold goes down. I mean, in the ocean, the temperatures and the depths are concerned with salinity and all sorts of other factors like hydrothermal vents. And you know, in my book, I had written about hydrothermal plumes, and 6 months after I wrote about them, they discovered hydrothermal plumes in the Atlantic Ocean. So, you know, Ellis was a moron, and the LA Times looked bad from it. And you know, as far as I was concerned, you know, first of all, my books are fiction, so I don't really have to defend my theories, but I still defend them anyway because they're scientifically plausible.
So with your books, do you try to write along the lines of like a scientific approach where some of the things in your book could be true? Or do you try to write it for like an entertainment stance where you put things in the book that couldn't be real in real life just to like for entertainment reasons?
Well, the most enjoyable entertainment in a science fiction-based book is when the science is real, because and then the storyline is entertainment, and you know that's what my books are. I mean, the science is always real, and the possibilities are always there, and you know, especially a book like Domain, where you know there's the lines are blurred between the science fiction and the science fact.
Well, did you have a question, Nick, about the Megalodon?
No, but I'm just looking at all of Mr. Alten's books, and I just want to ask some information about the shell game.
Okay. What was the question?
Oh, could you give us just a brief synopsis on the shell game? Or the trench. The trench, I think you mentioned that earlier.
Well, the 4 books in the Meg series are Meg, The Trench, Meg Primal Waters, and Meg Hell's Aquarium, which just came out in paperback. So the Trench is part of the Meg series. The shell game is something entirely different. The shell game is about the end of oil and the next 9/11 event that will push us into a war in Iran.
Well, do you think that the megamouth shark, wasn't that previously thought to have been a legend or to have been extinct? Just curious.
No, I mean, they didn't know the megamouth shark existed until they netted it. And it's just one of those creatures that, you know, again, we didn't know that was down there until we actually found one.
So are megamouth sharks, are those deep water sharks, or are those close to the surface?
No, they're deep water.
So are they rare?
Well, it's rare to catch one. I don't know if they're rare, but you know, again, it's not easy for us to reach the depths. We don't fish into the depths, and we don't, inhabit the depths, unless it's a scientific exploration. So it's hard to say if they're rare.
I was just wondering, so do you think that it would take something like that to try to get like a large shark like Megalodon or something? That to be like some sort of an accident or some sort of like just a coincidence, like just like a scientific team would be down in the area and it would go by or something?
It's hard to say. There'd have to be video footage for people to believe it. It could be something that, if I were to venture to guess, maybe a boat or an exploration or a Coast Guard or, is passing over a dead whale, and the whale carcass, attracts predators, and, maybe it attracts an egg.
Well, yeah, Brent, did you have a question?
What do you know if they even exist?
What was that question?
The Megalodon, like, since just from like an open mind, like would someone like say someone if someone was skeptical, how would you convince them that there was one actually existing?
Well, I wouldn't try to convince them that it existed. I just basically, like I've been saying, for the last 45 minutes, is it scientifically plausible for it to exist? Yes, it's scientifically plausible. Can I prove it exists? No, but you can't prove it doesn't exist. Don't tell me because you haven't seen it, it doesn't exist. That doesn't work for me. We didn't know atoms existed until we saw them in a microscope. So,
Do you do any diving or any sort of thing like that? Just curious.
After I wrote Meg, I got certified to scuba dive, but it's not, it's very addicting for some people. To me, it just didn't hit me, and I'm pretty much a land creature.
But speaking of the Monsterquest episode, do you plan on doing any other projects or any sort of TV shows or anything like that in the future?
Well, shows like Monsterquest and Jurassic Fight Club, which I was on, and the History Channel, and I get asked to do those things from time to time, and it's always an honor to do them, and they're fun. And we're pitching some shows right now to the History Channel and Discovery, and I've got 3 movies in development. So it's always nice to be able to do stuff like that. And, but it can't predict what's going to come up.
Well, just curious, would you ever make any of your Meg movies or your Meg books into a movie if somebody wanted to?
Well, Meg was optioned twice already. Once in '96 by Hollywood Pictures, and once in 2004, 2005 by New Line Cinema. And both times they went through lousy scripts and had some developmental problems with the people at the studio. We've got the rights back now. We've got a great script. We've got great producers. We've got the budget. We're just a couple of variables away from, getting this thing going. So, I'd say your answer would be yes.
So would you make some sort of a cameo shot in it?
I don't know. I'm not an actor.
And right now they're asking us in the chat room, how come there's no fossil evidence of the Megalodon besides the teeth?
Well, it's the nature of sharks. Sharks don't have a skeleton; they have cartilage, and cartilage dissolves in salt water. So when a Megalodon or a shark dies, it sinks to the bottom. It doesn't float. there's no air sacs in it, and other predators eat it, and the only thing that's left is its teeth.
Well, and also right now, someone is asking, do you have any sort of book signings or anything coming up like that?
I do go on book signings, and I usually list them on my website when I go. I don't have anything planned at this point. For paperbacks, I usually don't do too much. But for my next hardback, which is coming out in October, Grim Reaper, I'm sure I'll do some tours and stuff.
What's Grim Reaper? What's that one about?
Grim Reaper is my best book, my favorite book. It's sort of a modern-day Dante's Inferno, and it's about a man-made plague that strikes Manhattan, and the hero has to go through the 9 circles of hell, and very cool book.
Well, Nick, we have about 9 minutes left in the show. I was going to see, Nick, did you have any more questions?
Actually, he just answered. I was going to ask him about his new book that he just talked about. But no, I don't have any more questions.
Have you written any books on Bigfoot?
No, I haven't.
Well, something that I was personally wondering about Megalodon was, do you think that these creatures, just say if they were alive, just saying from that standpoint, do you think that these would go? Do you think that they would go close to land, or do you think that they would be way out in like the open ocean?
You're repeating your questions again. But to answer your question, again, you go where the food is. There's food in the open oceans. There's food close to shore. Megalodon like to hunt close to shore because that's where the whales gave birth to their calves. But, when they were out in the open ocean, that's where they hunted too.
Is there any sort of evidence of how old they got? Like how long they lived?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I was going to say, is there any sort of evidence of the lifespan of a Megalodon?
No, it's just conjecture, but probably like a great white shark, maybe 30, 35 years.
Well, our show only has a couple minutes left. I was gonna see if you wanted to say any sort of links or anything about any of your books or anything that, just any last minute things that you wanted any of our listeners to know.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to YouTube and you type in Meg Hell's Aquarium, you can see a promo for the book that's pretty cool. And if you go to my website, www.stevealten.com, you can see video trailers and free excerpts and all sorts of fun things. You can click on free updates and get my newsletter every month and maybe even be a character in one of my books.
Well, already, thanks for doing a show with us again tonight, Steve. I mean, it was pretty cool. Sorry we asked a couple of repeat questions there for a while.
That's okay. I'm having a hard time.
Yes. So, Nick, did you and Brent want to say anything to Steve before we end the show?
Oh yeah, I just thought to thank you personally again for coming on our show, and it might have been a little sketchy at times, but the Megalodon is kind of a topic that there isn't as much information about, perhaps, than other topics we talk about on our show, so it's sometimes hard to talk about it, but thanks for coming on.
It's not easy to fill an hour.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, anyway, Steve, thanks for doing a show with us. We'll have to do one again sometime on one of your other books, or after your next book comes out or something. We'll have to do another show sometime.
Well, I'm happy to do it.
Alrighty. Thanks, Steve. We'll have to talk again some other time.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right. Thanks.